Yes, it's Monday, March 4th. I've got a great guest joining me for the first time on today's show. Jason Sattler is his name. You might know him as one of the most popular accounts in all of political media, Twitter, at LOLGOP. Very smart, funny, passionate guy from Ann Arbor, Michigan, who has started a new project to help save democracy. I think you're going to like my conversation with the creator of a new newsletter called Earlyworm, Jason Sattler, on today's show. Our conversation begins at 23 minutes in. And I've got a great week of guests planned for you this week and a few open slots. So if you've got any ideas, I always appreciate your suggestions. Send them over. standupwithpete@gmail.com. I hope you are making your plans to join us in Las Vegas, March 22nd and 23rd. This week, I'll be rolling out a chat function or feature that hopefully everybody should have easy access to plan some events and coordinate with each other. That should be ready hopefully in the next 48 hours or so. Lots of people chatting on the Discord platform, but I know not everybody's there and some people struggle with that. So we'll create another way for folks to communicate about Vegas Pod Jam, March 22nd and 23rd. But right now, I've got your headlines from the weekend, the big weekend in news, of course. One of the biggest stories from yesterday, I'll bring some sound in the audio section coming up, is the Vice President, Kamala Harris, was in Selma over the weekend for the 59th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, and she made a rousing speech, including a moment where she demanded that the Palestinian militant group Hamas agree to an immediate 6-week ceasefire while forcefully urging Israel do more to boost aid deliveries into Gaza, where she said innocent people were suffering a, quote, humanitarian catastrophe. And some of the strongest comments by a senior leader of the U.S. government to date on the issue, the Vice President pressed the Israeli government and outlined specific ways on how more aid can flow into the densely populated enclave where hundreds of thousands of people are facing famine following 5 months of Israel's military campaign. Hard to believe. But Kamala Harris said on Sunday the people in Gaza are starving. Called for an immediate ceasefire as part of a hostage deal between Israel and Hamas. Vice President's remarks were the Biden administration's most comprehensive recognition of the suffering in Gaza and strongest appeal for a ceasefire yet. The U.S. airdropped 38,000 ready-to-eat meals into Gaza, U.S. Air Force, in humanitarian aid yesterday. President Biden lamented the tragic and alarming deaths of scores of Palestinians near a convoy of aid trucks this week as well. Also, an Israeli airstrike near a hospital in Rafah killed at least 11 people, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Also, of course, at Selma yesterday, the vice president said that she and President Biden continue to demand that the United States Congress pass the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act in honor of all those who marched 59 years ago. But man, we should be flying sorties every day, dropping humanitarian aid, get that hospital ship off the coast of the Gaza Strip, and everything else that we can possibly do to help those people, because the idea that they're starving to death and chaos is ensuing is just an absolutely horrendous situation to be allowed. We've got to do more about it. And we can. We've got the resources. We have the ability to do it. So we should use the United States military might and resources to help those people. All right, moving on. The other big story that was breaking yesterday afternoon was that apparently the U.S. Supreme Court is going to issue a ruling today, and a lot of experts and analysts are saying that it's probably going to be the Trump-Colorado ballot case. Court did not specify what ruling they plan to issue, but the decision does come a day before Colorado's state primary election. The Supreme Court, on an unusual Sunday update to its schedule, did not specify what ruling it would issue, but justices heard arguments on February 8th in Trump's appeal of the Colorado ruling and are due to issue their own decision. Nobody thinks that they're going to keep him off the ballot anywhere, but that would be a shocking outcome if it were the case. Other big story over the weekend was weather events. The Smokehouse Creek fire in Hutchinson County, Texas, increasing to a staggering 1,078,000 acres, just 15% contained as of Sunday afternoon. The fire began as a fast-moving grass fire last Tuesday, exploded in size, now the largest fire in state history, threatens to keep growing. Another blaze, the much smaller 687 Reamer fire, it's referred to, has also spread into the footprint of the Smokehouse Creek fire, effectively merging these two horrible wildfires which have now extended into Oklahoma. There's been one fatality associated with it. Governor of Texas issued a disaster declaration for 60 counties on February 27th. And now let's go to California, where the most powerful blizzard of the season pounding the Sierra Nevada mountain range with gusts of 190 miles an hour winds. Heavy snow Sunday forcing the closure of key roads to the Lake Tahoe and Mammoth Mountain areas. And the blizzard warning extended through Monday. And thinking of Kerry Williams and anybody else who might be in the middle of all that, Kerry's been sending me pictures. He is alive. We do have proof of life from Kerry, but I know he can't wait to get out there on a snowboard, too. In other news, yes, there's more. Congressional leaders yesterday announced a package of half a dozen annual appropriations bills to be voted on next week. It sets the stage for Congress to avoid partial government shutdown on March 8th. Top Democrats and Republicans in both chambers announced agreements on bills to fund a raft of less controversial government agency budgets until September 30th. The bills feature slight funding increases or reductions, but avoid the drastic cuts House Republican hardliners had been pushing for. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer lauded the fact that Democrats headed off cuts to nutritional benefits for women and children, as well as restrictions on abortion. So I guess that's good news. I'm still certain that a lot of these agencies are not well funded enough, and these cuts would do a lot of damage, but we'll see what happens with the rest of those bills and the funding of the bills that remain. All right, let's see. Rapid fire. Let's see. What do we got? After years of declining vaccination rates, Britain is experiencing a measles outbreak. How about it? So is Brazil and Florida. Great news, folks. The anti-vax movement is winning. The University of Florida has terminated all positions associated with diversity, equity, and inclusion to comply with new state regulations, and that idea could spread across the country real bad, real bad, I think. The state of Oregon is recriminalizing hard drugs. This is interesting. I think I probably should interview somebody about this. Only 3 years after the state removed penalties for drug possession, lawmakers hope the change will reduce overdose deaths, which have surged in Oregon, and I want to learn more. CVS and Walgreens, the largest U.S. pharmacy chains, announced they will start selling the abortion pill mifepristone this month, easing access for patients in states where abortion is legal. A businessman has pleaded guilty to trying to bribe Senator Bob Menendez, a New Jersey Democrat, by giving his wife a car, a Mercedes-Benz. Menendez and his wife have pleaded not guilty to bribery charges, and somehow the man is still serving in the United States Senate with access to all kinds of top secret reports. Not good, real bad. And coming up this week, North Dakota will hold their Republican caucuses today. Then it's Super Tuesday. 16 states have primary elections or caucuses, including California, where Representatives Katie Porter and Adam Schiff are competing for a Senate seat. President Biden will make the State of the Union address this Thursday. It's International Women's Day on Friday. Congress's deadline to avert the government shutdown Friday. And the disgraced former president is scheduled to host the authoritarian leader of Hungary, Viktor Orban, at Mar-a-Lago on Friday. Now, I'll host a hangout on Wednesday of this week because Thursday I actually have to go up and get Ava at college. She's coming home for the week for spring break. Very excited for that. But look for a Wednesday night hangout this week. And those are your headlines. Now let's get to the sound that I've gathered for you from the weekend. First, here is the Vice President Kamala Harris on Sunday at the 59th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. Thousands looked on as the vice president spoke at the Edmund Pettus Bridge, where she used part of her speech to draw attention to what was happening in the Middle East and demand there be an end to the fighting or a ceasefire.
To innocent Palestinians in need. Yesterday, the Department of Defense carried out its first airdrop of humanitarian assistance, and the United States will continue these airdrops. And we will work on a new route by sea to deliver aid. And the Israeli government must do more to significantly increase the flow of aid. No excuses. They must open new border crossings. They must not impose any unnecessary restrictions on the delivery of aid. They must ensure humanitarian personnel, sites, and convoys are not targeted. And they must work to restore basic services and promote order in Gaza so more food, water, and fuel.
There is more as well. The whole speech was really good, but she also talked about women's reproductive rights being taken away, and so I wanted to share that clip too.
The fight for freedom. Today in states across our nation, extremists propose and pass laws that attack the freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body. Laws that would make no exception even for rape or incest. Here in Alabama, they attack the freedom to use IVF treatment. Women and couples denied the ability to fulfill their dream of having a child. And consider the irony. On the one hand, these extremists tell women they do not have the freedom to end an unwanted pregnancy. And on the other hand, these extremists tell women they do not have the freedom to start a family. Let us agree. One does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling her what to do with her body.
All right, there you go. That is Kamala Harris at the 59th anniversary Bloody Sunday on the Selma Bridge, which she marched with other civil rights leaders, thousands in attendance there to see her speak. All right, I wanted to play something else for you, which I thought was interesting. This is on CNN. Chris Wallace has a talk show there, and he asked Wendell Pierce, who's a very respected actor, he's in the show The Wire and, well, just about everything else. He asked him about portraying the Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas in an HBO film, and he got a bit of an earful about Wendell Pierce's views on the justice's views on race. I thought this was real good.
In 2016, you played another lawyer named Clarence Thomas as he faced charges of harassment in the HBO movie Confirmation. This is one of the classic he said, she said cases. Who do you think was telling the truth, Clarence Thomas or Anita Hill?
Something happened between them. The impropriety, level of impropriety, I don't think we will ever truly know. Clarence Thomas was very similar to me, is very similar to me. Grew up in the South, understanding and feeling events of racism, Black Catholic. But this is my opinion about the man, the perception, he was actually a Black radical when he was in college. And I think there's the moment I saw where the politics separated. And it's not because of politics, it's because of humanity, something that happened to you. He could not get a job with a Yale degree in law in Savannah. And instead of him being able to perceive that as the racist act that it was, this is an old boys network and you're not going to be a part of it, he in turn blamed it on affirmative action, right?
That they don't. His Yale degree was.
This is my Yale degree, and they don't see me as worthy, and it's because of the affirmative action. If I had a chance, I would say to the justice, they just didn't like your Black ass.
Woo! Wendell Pierce. Good stuff. I love that guy. He's a great, great actor. And I thought that was a pretty interesting commentary. Smart dude. I think he went to Yale or something. All right, now let's head over to Fox News, reliable sources, where the tide is starting to turn. Even one of the most extreme right-wing commentators, Tommy Lahren, is saying that the optics for impeachment against Joe Biden, they don't look really good. Doesn't look really good to attack Hunter Biden, who's an addict.
Both sides have been spinning this, obviously, and if this other televised hearing comes about, I can just imagine the ratings. But Jim Comer says the deposition was successful. They were able to prove several bits of our evidence. That's a quote from the congressman. The question the mainstream media keep asking is, where's the proof that Joe Biden got a dime?
Yeah, and that's going to be the difficult part for Republicans. And I got to say, as somebody who does believe there's plenty of evidence here, I think that this has failed optically for Republicans, and they've done good work. Obviously, Jim Jordan, Comer have done great work on this, but optically it does make it seem as though they're beating up on someone with addiction issues. That's exactly what the media wanted it to look like. That's how they framed it, and unfortunately, that's what's coming to fruition. So I would encourage Republicans, I know you want to get to the bottom of this, but let's focus on the election. Let's focus on the failed policies of Joe Biden. This impeachment inquiry, unfortunately, is falling flat with a lot of viewers and voters.
Tommy and I found common ground.
How about it? We found common ground. With Tommy, it's falling flat with a lot of viewers and voters. Yeah, I think you're right about that. It's going nowhere. All right, now let's move on to the Secretary of State of Michigan. We talked about her last week. I talk about her with my guest today, Jason Sattler, I should say. And real smart woman, Jocelyn Benson, talking about the primary results from last week and what it portends for the general election in November.
And in addition to that, I think, we're going to hear a lot about 2016 over the next several months and how Trump won Michigan in 2016 by 10,000 votes. And that's true. But after 2016, citizens amended our Constitution to expand our voting rights significantly, and our turnout among all voters has markedly increased since. And that really also has coincided with Democrats ultimately getting to be a trifecta in Michigan in 2022, where now Democrats, after not having any control in 2012, now have control not just of the governors and the executive branch, but of the state Senate and the state legislature. So, it's a new day for democracy in Michigan. It has become a new day since the last time Donald Trump won this state. And I think that is an important thing to keep in mind as we try to predict how things are going to go over the next 8 months.
All right, now let's head over to Meet the Press yesterday, where the anchor Kirsten Welker is getting really heavily criticized every Sunday. She seems to make another unforgivable mistake. This week, people were pretty fired up about this short clip where she was introducing a segment, and she used the word allegedly.
Mr. Trump's claim that he's immune from criminal prosecution for allegedly trying to overturn the 2020 election.
A lot of people don't think she should have used the word allegedly, and I think she was referring to the court case and what it will find, and she was using probably the right legal language, but that did not make any of her critics or Trump's critics happy, and I'm really not sure what the answer is, so maybe she was wrong to use that, but it irked a lot of people yesterday. Now I want to play for you one of my favorite senators. This is Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, was on ABC's This Week talking about the president's visit to the border this week, and that Democrats needed to go on offense on the issue. He was one of the senators who negotiated immigration reform out of the Senate, but of course it never got taken up in the House because Donald Trump wanted it dead.
Well, first, I was very glad to see the president go to the border. I think Democrats need to go on the offense on this question of controlling the border. The fact of the matter is we did achieve a bipartisan compromise that would give the president new powers to get the border under control, and Donald Trump killed it. Donald Trump and Republicans decided that they want the border to be chaotic because it helps them politically. And polls show that if Democrats just tell that story, if the president tells that story, Republicans' political advantage on the border is erased. Now, the reality is President Biden needs that legislation because it is just not true that he has the existing authority to issue executive actions that can get the border under control.
All right. Well, those are all the audio clips I've got for you. Senator Chris Murphy there on ABC's This Week, and we'll learn a lot more about immigration, I think probably negotiations this week, as well as Ukraine and more. We'll see. But I always like to end the news segment on a laugh. I loved the Weekend Update with Michael Che and Colin Jost. They always do a great job. And Saturday night was live, and Weekend Update was hilarious.
President Biden visited the southern border on Thursday and was horrified to discover it is being swarmed by criminals and rapists.
They put a picture of Trump up.
That's right. Both Biden and Trump coincidentally visited the border on the same day, which sounds like the setup for the weirdest rom-com of all time.
You've got migrants.
My favorite part of the visit was when Trump, who looks good behind bars, by the way, finally came face-to-face with his sworn enemies, the migrants, and he had a pretty harsh message for them. Take a look.
He's just waving to people across the river through barbed wire.
They like Trump. Can you believe it?
No, I can't believe it. The migrants don't like you. They just walked 1,000 miles to get to edge of this river, and they're probably thinking, is that weirdo in a Trump costume waving us into the country?
Mitch McConnell, seen here catching up on news from the Middle East.
Picture of Mitch McConnell
announced
smiling.
that he will step down as the Republican leader in the Senate, with many saying the main reason is his bad relationship with Donald Trump. But come on, just because you hate somebody doesn't mean you can't still have a very successful working relationship with them.
Picture him and Colin Jost, who he is sitting next to. It's funny.
I almost feel like that was about me. Mitch McConnell, seen here walking out of a theater after watching 12 Years a Slave.
Also smiling. Just a big smiling Mitch McConnell.
Announced he will step down in November. He'll be replaced by the current number 2 Republican in the Senate, a frozen embryo holding an assault rifle. Mitch McConnell, seen here after rearranging a blind woman's furniture.
Same picture.
Gave a moving speech on the Senate floor announcing his retirement, which honestly made me start to admire Mitch McConnell. Seen here watching a single mother sell her blood for diaper money.
Just another picture of Mitch McConnell smiling.
Mississippi Republican Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith blocked a bill that would protect access to in vitro fertilization because, as they say in Mississippi, if you're having trouble conceiving, just try with a different cousin. After Nikki Haley's poor showing in Michigan, pressure is mounting for her to drop out of the race, but mostly because the dishes are piling up at home.
Oh, that was sexist. Not funny. Come on.
Thank you.
President Biden went to Walter Reed Medical Center for his annual physical. Doctors said Biden was fit as a fiddle, in that he's old-timey and held together by strings.
In an interview, Senator Mitt Romney said that he will not vote for Donald Trump over Joe Biden. Now, some of you may remember Mitt Romney.
That's the end of the joke. All right, there you go. That is today's news segment. I hope you liked it, and thank you very much for subscribing to the show. I put it together every day for you and on Saturdays as well, usually. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. For those of you who have and have upgraded your subscriptions, you are the greatest. You are the MVPs. Thank you so much. Let's get to my guest, who is, for a long time, been one of my favorite Twitter handles, at LOLGOP. And then I finally figured out there's actually a man behind that handle, and his name is Jason Sattler. We've touched base a couple times over the years, but recently he launched a new project, and I wanted to help promote it because I think he's a real smart, passionate guy. And he's launched a new independent publication called I Know How Much You Care in February. And check out Earlyworm.com. That's ERLYWRM.com. All of it is linked in the show notes, but Jason says it's a site where you can always find the latest news along with candidates and causes to support it. It's a monthly giving guide that puts 2024 in perspective. Probably be a podcast. If anything, we can do to feed democracy the most nourishing and effective possible ways. Jason is a writer who has appeared in USA Today, the New York Daily News, Alternate, but like I said, you probably know him as at LOLGOP on Twitter, which is a website that used to exist. All right, for the first time ever, it's Jason Sattler from Ann Arbor, Michigan on Stand Up right now. Yeah, there's the early bird himself, Jason Sattler. Welcome to the show. I've been a fan of yours for such a long time. We've talked off the air, but here we are, the interview finally. Great to have you, man. Really great.
Thanks for doing it, Pete. I assumed it would never happen, but that it is, I'm more than thrilled. Thank you.
Well, I think when we talked the first time, I said, I just want to talk to you. I've been such a fan of your Twitter feed for such a long time. And we had this long talk. And I was like, hey, if there's ever anything that you want to promote or, tell people about. And you were real modest. You're like, I'm just doing my thing. I'm writing, doing my thing. And, I'll take you up on that. And here we are. Earlyworm has launched and we have something, an actual thing, a really cool new endeavor, project, thing for you to do journalistically. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I gave myself a job. I decided I came into some job troubles, transitions. I was in the tech industry, and it comes to 2024, and a lot of people are being laid off. And I thought, hey, I'm going to give myself the job I want, and that's CEO, Chief Earlyworm Officer. Earlyworm is a publication. It's a movement. It's a venture. It's an endeavor. It's an effort to try to make the best use of what I see as my only skill in life, and that's retweeting good tweets, spreading good information, getting ideas out there, help raising funds for good causes, focusing on the right thing. So that's what Earlyworm's all about, is trying to take this idea that there are 20 to 30% of us in this country, and this definitely includes you, Pete, everybody who listens to this, who give a shit about politics, and we almost do it to our detriment, into the detriment of democracy. We are obsessed. We have twitchy thumbs. If we hear Mitch McConnell resigned and we didn't hear about it within the first 15 minutes that it happened, we wonder how we finally got off the grid somehow. We feel like survivalists all of a sudden. So these are news junkies, and academics think that the news junkies like us actually drive the coverage to be more sensationalized, more ridiculous, more concentrated on Lauren Boebert's family, and every member of the family. I remember when I used to know all of Mitt Romney's kids,
right now,
Nick and Rip and Dip, and all of them. It's about trying to tie action to news is, I guess, the big idea that I'm trying to do here. And I had a friend who was a good designer, and it kind of looks legitimate, and I'm proud to get out there in the world and do it.
I like that a lot. And you're the right person to do it. Tying action to news. Give me an example of what you hope to achieve. And I appreciate that you shared my comments at the school board, because I feel the exact same way. I feel like if I don't actually take action and I'm just talking about the news and things that are happening, then I'm the worst kind of person.
Yeah,
so,
I actually think that was kind of like if there was an Earlyworm Hall of Fame, we would open it with that speech that you gave at your school board, because that's exactly the kind of stuff that just love to see in the world, and that's taking what we see and talk about every day and actually having that conversation with people in public in democracy. And I don't expect everybody in the world to be Pete Dominick and be able to go give a speech like that, because knowing how to use a mic and knowing how to talk like that's a skill that does not come easily. It is hard won. Lots of late nights, I can imagine. And so everybody can do something. We all can't give that kind of speech, but we can all. If we can't give, we can reshare. If we can't reshare, then we can.
There's just so much that people can do in any kind of local campaign, from writing postcards to knocking on doors to making phone calls to organizing to getting your friends out to building a website to come up with the branding and imagery. Like right now, we're putting together a school board run with 3 people on it, and there's something for everybody to do. And not only am I good on the microphone, people say doing stand up is scary. I always think that's hilarious. I'm like, no, we're just needy and sick and broken. Speaking at the school board is scary. Because that's scary, because they'll threaten your life. They threatened my family. I mean, so most people don't want to put themselves out there. Certainly not on what we're talking about right now, these LGBT issues, because they're literally publicly outing their gender identity or sexual orientation, and they shouldn't have to do that. That's not the case, if you're a person of color or something like that. I mean, you can't hide in that way, but people want to, because they don't want to put a target. And so I think the rest of us, as Dr. King said, we've got to do something. So why are you're white, you're a man, I don't know your gender things and so on, but I mean, like, what influenced you to even care about this? Like, who were you as a boy?
Yeah. I'm someone who grew up in the northern corner of the San Fernando Valley, where they used to film the cowboy movies, and then the Manson family kind of took that over, as people kind of saw in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It was a pretty distant, kind of peaceful, out of nowhere childhood where Reagan kind of ruled and everything seemed simple. And then I had a government teacher who gave us extra credit for being involved in politics. So a friend decided he was going to run, and I was going to be his campaign manager. So this is like 1993. We worked on a community college trustee position campaign, much like you're kind of doing now. We tried to do everything ourselves, and this was before everybody had Photoshop on their phone, and everybody could make news from anywhere. And it was
you had to cut letters out.
We would, we did the fax. We did a lot of the fax. He got the fax in his room. My friend Josh, who now, Josh got really involved in politics. He ran for office in San Francisco. So he actually did something good with this.
Wow.
What I did with it is, I went on and I got an MFA at some point and, started tweeting in 2009, which turned out to be the right time to start tweeting. And I just had an overwhelming passion for talking about politics, for seeing politics, and then recognizing that it was no joke whatsoever, and that trying to get people to laugh about politics, just being hello GOP, was probably helped prepare for what happened in 2016, which is the idea that people weren't going to take it seriously. And a literal clown who sells his fans gold clown shoes could come in and become president of the United States by losing by millions of votes because of so many things had been rigged. And I realized I had been a beneficiary of this rigging. I'd gone too far in life based on my limited amount of talent and looks. And I realized I had some opportunity to help more people than I did. So I was a columnist for USA Today for a while. Then all of a sudden, when Joe Biden became president, they said we probably don't want someone upsetting Republicans any more than we already have. And I've been writing freelance for Alternate. I write for George Lakoff's Frame Lab blog every once in a while, and I'm mostly doing this Earlyworm thing. And I have a passion, and if the passion I have is for democracy. And I actually interviewed Dr. Jen Murcia yesterday, and she was talking about how we're not actually, that the thing they say about we're a republic, not a democracy. She totally agrees with that. But what I kind of realize is that's our challenge, is to turn America into a democracy and to keep it that way. And because there's no hope for the people the underdogs, unless there is a democracy. That's really the only way to fight bullies, I think, is for everyone to band together and do what you did, Pete, at your school board. And that's actually kind of speak out and lift up the people we can when we do get a chance.
Yeah, really well said, and really interesting background about your life and why you care so much and where it started. It starts for a lot of people, sometimes with a teacher, sometimes through school, which is what it sounded like to you. And, whatever it is. But I think that when you talk about democracy, what we have or what we don't have, in your town, you have it to a certain extent. Your town's not gerrymandered, most likely. Your town's not most likely rigged with, tremendous amount of corrupt money. And I mean, incumbency is always hard to beat. And, certain families have been around. But networks are networks. You can organize. You can meet new people. I say this phrase a lot. It makes me uncomfortable. And I wonder what you think of it. Yeah. We're the ones we've been waiting for, Jason. Like, it's you. Yeah. It's you. Look at you. It's you. I know. Really? You're going to save us?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, no, it's the scariest revelation in the world is that if we're not going to do it, somebody else is going to have to do it. And it's probably not going to get done. And
we're going to get done. We're going to get done. You
make a great point about your town not being gerrymandered. I live in Ann Arbor, which, instantly what got conjures in your mind is probably like socialist paradise, the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, we have co-ops for our co-ops.
University of Michigan there. So it's a college town.
Yeah,
and that means there's a lot of diversity, a lot of youth, and a lot of people catering to the diverse youth.
Yeah, and when I moved here, it was about as conservative as you could get in the town. No growth, which basically means we're not going to build apartments because we don't want anyone to take our home value down. We had a bunch of people who were running as independents who everybody knew were Republicans, and they just cared more, and they just did more, and they came out and they built their networks, and they had concerted power, and they ran this city. Then all of a sudden, the mistake that was made for them is that Donald Trump got elected, and everybody kind of woke up in 2017 and said, if we don't get in these individual groups, if we don't start running, if we don't start supporting people, and Ann Arbor is now transformed. We're in the process of trying to get our own utility. We're trying to do the things that you thought Ann Arbor would have done 20 years ago, but it really didn't happen until Donald Trump. In a certain way, I don't want to give him any credit. The most democratizing force in this country was Donald Trump.
Oh, no doubt about it. Yeah, no, I was trying to. I think for sure. My whole entire career was about trying to fight apathy. The apathy that I certainly got woken up from at 9/11 and at other points in my life. And I was trying to do it through comedy, like you. I mean, that's what brought us together to a certain extent. I mean, working at Colbert and at The Daily Show, and now I'm at John Oliver. And I think there's a way
all of them.
To cut through, a way to cut through to people, to get through to people, to talk to them. But still, it was never enough. You could never do enough to fight the apathy and the lack of caring that people had. You had to bring a Donald Trump onto the world stage, and you had to start taking stuff from people. And I think that's the most animating thing, is that when people are complacent and they're doing well, especially liberal folks, they don't really think about it. But then you cut the Voting Rights Act, you overturn Roe v. Wade and take women's reproductive rights. You could be someone who all you do is watch influencers and TikTok and bullshit reality. All of a sudden you're in. Like, you're folded into the conversation and to politics because of them taking stuff. That's one view I have. What do you think of it?
I absolutely believe that 1,000%. You know, something about Trump upset women especially, just kind of as like a personal insult. But Dobbs, I think, the overruling of Roe, that I think what made it concrete for a lot of people that we really had something to lose here and we lost it. And we lost it when we weren't paying attention in 2016, when we were laughing at Trump and when we were assuming that Nate Silver was right about this. Back, you know, I mean, things were so innocent then. We thought Nate Silver really knew what he was talking about then. It was a different time.
Oh, how far?
He may be a guest here, but you know, things have changed. It's a different world now, and I think that the Dobbs. I wrote about this a lot last midterm. Is there was a Dobbs backlash that was so obvious from the beginning. I knew that when they put it on the ballot here in Michigan, they got like twice as many signatures as they needed. They're like, you need more. The energy that went into ending the attack on and we have Betsy DeVos in the state. We had all kinds of things in the state. Like they wanted you to get special rape insurance in the state when we had Republicans running it for a decade.
Right.
So you had to get a separate policy that if you get raped, so you can get paid for your abortion specifically. This is what Republicans were coming up with in Michigan for a decade. So we were on the cusp. We've seen it all. So I've gone from having, you know, the number one accomplishment for my state government being poisoning an entire city to in the last year, since they've switched the trifecta here, we've established codified Roe into our Constitution.
Yeah, help me understand a little bit more about Michigan while you're on it. It's obviously in the news this week. And you went from Rick Snyder being the governor, Flint, Michigan, and the lead in the water and all that controversy. And then Betsy DeVos, of course, her family, and Grand Rapids is a pretty conservative place. I think that's where she's from. There are all kinds of
the top of the pyramid, the Amway pyramid.
Exactly, yeah. And then you've now got this huge changeover where you said, what is it, the triumvirate? Everybody refers to the governor, the Secretary of State, and the Attorney General, Gretchen Whitmer, Dana Nessel, and Benson, is it? Jocelyn.
Yep.
How did they arrive on the scene? What is Michigan today? And of course, I really want to get your take on what happened on Tuesday and the Arab Muslim vote in Michigan and how much it'll matter in the general election. So just tell me a little bit more specific about what's changed in Michigan and what you think that Tuesday night signaled for the general for Joe Biden.
Yeah, it really is two stories in Michigan because it's the most optimistic story and it's also the scariest story of 2024. And I'll start with the optimism. So Gretchen Whitmer was a veteran of these horrible Republican triumvirates, trifectas that they had for, you know, we lost the Senate in Michigan in 1984 with they called them the Reagan Republicans and Macomb. So since 1984, Republicans to 2022, Republicans controlled our state Senate. Wow. Whitmer was a leader in this. She was in the legislature. She was literally kicked out of the state capitol at one point by Republicans for saying the word vagina. So she was fighting the good fight. She was part of this, this group of women who were outraged by the Republicans, and we just thought we'd never be able to do anything about it. After Trump won, our ACLU and just the progressive community in the state, they said, you know what, we actually should turn Michigan into a democracy. They got rid of gerrymandering. We have a bipartisan gerrymandering commission. We established mail-in voting so everyone can vote from everywhere. Same day registration. The combination of all of this with abortion rights being on the ballot in 2022, literally on the ballot, it gave, we went from the darkest of the dark when it comes to progress to the brightest of the bright in the nation. We're competing with Minnesota to do good things. So they're giving free lunches. We're going to throw in oranges. So it's great to see what's going on in the Midwest after it's been terrible for so long. Now, I've been warning that this is serious what's going on in Michigan. There are a lot of people who are taking advantage of a terrible situation and exploiting their anti-Biden bias. There are a lot of MAGA people, even in the Muslim community. I'd say there's several. And they're being opportunistic and they are using this moment to try to gin up opposition to Joe Biden because they just want to elect Donald Trump. And there are a lot of people who would never vote for Joe Biden anyway. And then there are a lot of people who are of good conscience in Michigan who just have close relatives and friends and family or know friends and family who know people in Gaza. It's the one state in this union where there are enough people who have a close connection to what's going on in Gaza on the side of the invasion to where they could actually swing the election one way or another. And their perception is their voice is not being heard. It wasn't until the last few years that we finally had a Muslim representative in Congress. The voice of, I'm Jewish. I was raised Jewish. I was in a Hebrew school. My teachers were all Holocaust survivors. I was raised with the idea that Israel was the greatest thing that came out of the only good thing that came out of the Holocaust. And, I bought that my whole life, and I just am looking at what's going on now. And if I were on the other side, I would certainly be not sitting here saying that the biggest problem is that the military in Israel doesn't have enough money. So I also recognize that what Joe Biden is doing, his straight in support of Israel, is probably helping him in Pennsylvania, which is another mess-win state. So there is a bind one way or another. And I would never say to anybody who actually sees a chance to help end an invasion and death, and this invasion of Rafah will be a disaster. Yeah. And everybody should do everything they can to stop it. If that's my point of view. I'm just speaking for myself here. But I recognize the people of good faith in my state who are trying to use this to say, we would like to vote for Joe Biden, but we want him to understand this is our one chance to say, you need to listen to us because we're willing to risk it all to try to save our loved ones' lives.
Really well said. Really important perspective, and a wide perspective that you cast there. I think doing a good job presenting all of the different legitimate interests and concerns. I just look at it and say, good for them, for everybody who voted uncommitted to send the signal. You organized, you sent the signal, and you got a lot of people to vote for that. If you vote or against Joe Biden or don't vote in November, then I have no patience for that whatsoever. I would think you'd be voting against your own self-interest. I mean, somebody dismissed that whole campaign with no nuance, but like, dude, if Trump were in office, he would have nuked Gaza. Like, right. Just to be clear, like, we can totally disagree with everything that Biden is doing and rhetorically and in terms of the funding of it and so on. But
yeah, and I think it's going to get scary because I think RFK Jr. is a Steve Bannon plot. He's going to be smart enough to say, hey, you're going to end the war in Gaza, go campaign on that just in Michigan, spend all your time in Michigan. But I do think that people are smart enough. I think there's two things going on. People are smart enough to recognize. Is that your thought, or have
you seen reporting on that strategy?
Just making this up off the top of my head. Okay. This is a prediction.
I hope you're wrong, but I wouldn't put it above him. Bannon is brilliant.
Yeah, it's a classic rat fuck move, and I anticipate it happening. Something like that will happen. One of either Cornel West or someone will get a lot of energy for doing that, and they're going to make it about that. But I think there's two things going on. There's a legitimate movement that is happening, but then there's also Dearborn is getting more conservative, and this is, a huge Muslim population. The stuff about grooming and LGBT kids in the school, I hate to say it, has worked. There is a stronghold. Even Democrats in that area have grabbed onto that and bought into that. I'd call it a lie. You call it a myth.
It's a fear tactic that a lot of people are vulnerable to. They're worried about their kids, and I understand that, because forget about that. I have been fighting against that as well my entire life as a parent, trying to fight what we'd all been brainwashed with, stranger danger. I'm a big fan of Lenore Skenazy and the free range parenting, and parents are terrified of all kinds of shit that's not going to happen. I have an hour of jokes about making fun of other parents, my kids' friends. So when you start telling them this stuff that's happening in the school, the fact that they believe it and are animated by it, it's a real shame. But there's a lot of people that believe that there's teachers are allowing kids to be whatever they want, putting kitty litter to accommodate them. And, you say to them, but there's not a teacher in the country that would allow a kid to shit in a litter box in the classroom. What are you talking about? And the truth about that
would have to clean it up.
Well, it's a health hazard. It's against the law. The truth about that is apparently they do have litter boxes in some classrooms. I read the report on this because it's in there for lockdowns.
Yep.
Did you hear that story?
Yep.
It's crazy. In case they can't go to the bathroom because there's a fucking shooter walking through the hallways, and God forbid a kid does have to take a shit or piss in a box. They pull the curtain and let him pretend to be a cat so they don't get killed.
Yeah, and then a lot of these same people are so worried about, the teachers and the librarians are sending their kids to these youth pastors, and Google youth pastor and abuse right now. And
the books in the library, and the books are teaching the kids about sex. It's just it's so, that stuff is so hard for me to believe. Like a book in a library,
what is the absurdity? The parents they know what's on their phone, right? They know what their kids have access to the same internet as them, right?
Yes, the internet. It's amazing and dangerous and terrible. And if you want to see anything at all sexually, just put the words together. There's an entire movement. There's a whole community that loves that kink, whatever it is, and your kid's going to find it. And they're screaming about a book. I hope they read a book where there's a sex scene in it and the rest of it is coming of age stories. I hope that. That would be great.
What if this is the best, literacy program that's ever been invented, is trying to trick kids into reading books by making them think there's something dangerous and scary in the library. It's the one way you're going to get them into the library right now, I think.
Yes, but if those books aren't in there because there's crazy parents, one thing that's being said, we're just one more point on the education, that here by a board member in our community is, and it's a beautiful sentiment, and I think it's true around the country. The kids are all right. The kids are better to each other in a lot of ways than we were. Granted, they don't have a sanctuary from bullying because of social media, and there's a lot of bad things about all of that. But overwhelmingly, kids are a lot less judgmental in a lot of different ways, I could say. And certainly even in our district, the kids are all right. It's the parents that are scaring the shit out of their kids and converting their kids into whatever they want them in their own image, little mini MAGAs. The parents are the problem, not the kid.
There was a moment that I'll never forget in 2012. I went to cover an event where all the Republican nominees were speaking before the 2012 GOP primary. And Rick Santorum came out. And this is when I was surprised. I think Rick Santorum ended up winning Michigan or coming close to winning Michigan. And I was like, what is the appeal of this guy? He was a joke to me, because of Dan Savage. And he came out there and he gave a speech and he goes, how arrogant of Barack Obama to think that every kid should go to college. And he said it with such disdain, like, college. Can you believe that he wants kids to go to every kid should go to, and the audience. So this is an audience filled with, it was an RV park. I'll just say that. It was just, it's older white people. And I'll add one more thing. Nice people. And I found this for sure. Nice people who could flip on a dime. And when they heard this, they wanted to jump out of their seats. They were so with him. They were so mad at the idea that college could turn their kids against them. That's what they're afraid of, is this idea of their kids are going to find out what empathy is at some point and hate them. Now, at that same event, I'll just bring this up because I never get a chance to talk about it, and it's one of the most random things ever. I started a fight with Andrew Breitbart. This is when Occupy was going on, and he was calling them just because this is what he did. And I don't even know if anyone remembers him anymore, but he started Breitbart. And he was calling all the Occupy people rapists, because I think there was one rape at an Occupy event somewhere. And so every one of them is a rapist. Yeah. So I went up to him and I said, what is your evidence of this? And he kept just started screaming at me. What is your evidence of this? Screaming louder and louder. What is your evidence of this? But before I came up to start talking to them, and I just started talking to Andrew, all the people around me, the nicest people ever. How you doing, buddy? How's it going? Everything. Right. Yeah. The moment they saw that he was mad at me, they would have grabbed me and put me against the fence. Yep. It's just it's a switch.
Yep. Very tribal. When it comes to these issues, especially that people are so afraid, they think they're protecting their kids. Is there any audio or video of that encounter?
There's one picture. There's a picture.
Send it to me. I'll include it in show links for this conversation. It's
just like him rising up there. And then the next day is when he died. He had a heart attack the next day.
Oh, really? You killed Andrew Breitbart?
I don't mind the rumor. They said there was no drugs. I still don't understand it. He's younger than I am
Must
now.
Have been the vaccine.
That's right.
What do you think COVID did to America?
See, I have a hard time kind of speaking to this because I'm a little disconnected from reality. What I've seen now is reality. I'm one of the people in a mask. I'm a good mask. So I'm at the store. I still have a hard time.
Still now today.
Till today, I'm trying to, my wife's trying to get me to go eat at places indoors, and this is Michigan. If you're not going to eat indoors, you're not going to eat out for about,
Oh, so you're like very traumatized by it. You do not want to get sick. You're terrified to get sick. Is that right?
The only thing that seems worse than COVID to me is long COVID. And I just don't like the idea of something I could avoid being with me the rest of my life, and just in the kind of mystery of it. It's still the third biggest killer in the United States. And
does your wife argue with you about it?
I argue with myself. And I have multiple therapists have told me that I'm just off base here. And what actually kind of convinced me that I'm probably, disconnected from reality, I'll accept that, is when I went to, I had to go for work to Helsinki in May of 2022. And I was 2 masks between here and Helsinki. Europe just gave up on masks just right around the same time we did. They had much higher vaccination rates, so it made more sense. So, but yeah, that kind of made me aware of that. I'm a bit disconnected from reality on that.
Well, I want to come back to that in a subsequent conversation, because there's a lot of people who have the same feelings. I just talked with Jason Johnson. I don't know if he's exactly where you're at, but Dr. Jason Johnson, he's got a lot of issues around it. I have on a small spectrum. I don't love being right next to people across. I never really did, to be honest. But, doing stand up and stuff, I've been a little more discouraged to go out and so on. I think everybody's affected to some extent. Not everybody, but let's come back to that, because I want to get back to democracy and Earlyworm and what you're doing, connecting news to action, which I love this idea. When you think about talking about Michigan as a laboratory experiment, and it's a pretty good one, how do you see how the country could become a more flourishing democracy? What are some of the things? To me, it all seems to start and begin with the Supreme Court. And if you don't change the makeup of the court, then you're not going to be able to do a lot of the things that we would need to do. But what do you think needs to be done? You just interviewed Ari Berman, of course, who's probably one of the foremost experts and journalists on this for your new podcast. What did he say?
Yeah, I didn't talk specifically about the Supreme Court, but I'm 100% with you. And I think this is our last chance to do it. If you look at the Senate map, I think Biden should be running on expanding the Supreme Court. I think the Senate races should be all about expanding the Supreme Court. It's the only way we'll ever get Roe back. And we're going to lose our last chance this time around. But since I've limited power to do that, I could write an op-ed or two maybe. What I'm focused on is trying to get the people who are involved in Earlyworm, or the people's attention I have, to try to turn Arizona into the next Michigan. So we've tested the waters here. We've had a good test case in what you can do with a trifecta here. Arizona, I don't know if people know this, is only one seat in both houses away from a Democratic trifecta. So, and also in 2024, there's also a U.S. Senate seat. Kristen Sinema is probably not going to run, and Ruben Gallego probably is and could defeat Carrie Lake, keep that seat. And if Joe Biden's winning Arizona, that probably means he's going to be president. And I think flipping state legislatures is the number one thing Democrats should be thinking about, building majorities where they have them if you are there. But there's flippable state legislatures in surprising places. And the States Project is someone who I'm working with to try to do this. We're doing a giving circle. Anybody can set these up. And our goal is about flipping state houses. To give you the little numbers, 1,500 seats decided the control of the state houses in Arizona. That is a doable amount of money. Maybe you can't donate that much money. Maybe you can't make that many calls, but you could definitely be part of the snowball that makes that happen, because it doesn't need to be that big. Michigan, 500 seats gave us control of the House here. You don't have the Michigan success story if you don't have those 500 seats. And those come from small dollar donors picking the right campaign and the right candidate at the right time. So that is really what I think is the most kind of, if you're talking Moneyball, the Moneyball aspect of Earlyworm, that's something that we're focused on. And then just also in general, because you go broke just giving money to good causes, taking free actions, just the right things to share, from voter registration, from, volunteering for different campaigns, but also contacting members of Congress, giving comments to regulations, which actually matter for this year, may matter for another 4 years if we can win in this time around. So it's making democracy a participation sport is, I think, one action a day that at least gives you a choice or a chance to do that. Can't overwhelm people with actions, I think. And one a day is a lot, but I just want people to know there's a fresh one every day if they come back.
I love it. I love that. That's a great concept and great idea and a great organization that you're working with. And I think it should be doable for everybody listening to this, to support that and to support you at Earlyworm. I'm thinking about, I'll talk to you further about this, but if I change somehow, I'll come up with a strategy, and I'm trying to think out where to go. But I want to talk to you about that. And I say it on the podcast, so listeners, because I mentioned it at our Hangout.
Yeah.
But so listeners can bribe me with home-cooked meals in that state.
Well, I recommend Public Enemies by the time I get to Arizona, because I do think Arizona is a really interesting place. And it'll be nice and, in the mid 100s there. So.
Yeah, that's what's discouraging me. I don't know if I care about democracy that much.
Well, Michigan will have some 90s here and 80s, and it'll also be close in Michigan, and the dinner is promised here, so you got one free one already.
I really appreciate you joining me, man. Let's talk again soon about this, and regularly throughout these next 6 months for sure, or however many days there are until the election. Make sure you stay in touch with me, and I hope everybody listening will get in touch with Jason and follow and support Earlyworm right now, because that's the action that you can do today, is follow and support. You can do it for free, and if you like it, you go give him a little bit of money, and so he can keep doing it, and he's one of the good ones. You are one of the good ones, and that can be seen as, in your case, anti-Semitic, I think. I'm trying to think of what you were for a second. I was like, he's one of the good ones, so that's not...
Well, you're good. That's what we try to be. We could be a mensch. That's the highest.
Yeah, he is a mensch.
If I'm a mensch, that's a good one.
You are certainly that. Thank you so much for talking to me, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, there he goes. Jason Sattler, everybody, at LOLGOP on Twitter, earlyworm.com. Go follow, go support. All that information is in the show notes, and I hope you liked it. Thank you very much for listening. You guys are the greatest, you bumblebees here at the end, and I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow. Who will it be? Who should it be? Well, David K. Johnston is set to tape with me, so we'll see what happens with that, and I might do 2 other interviews as well, but I don't want to say that they're not done. I haven't heard back yet, but we'll see, and we will check back in tomorrow with you, and before then, and whenever. All right, I hope you have a great day, a great beginning of your week. I really appreciate you. Jon Carroll taking us out as always.
Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know us right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense and you stand up. Stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up. Stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up. People got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on.